I love all of that information that we just shared. Alex had such a good time, and it's so much fun to remember when. And this was memory lane that we're going to take it down now. We've got some photographs we're going to share with you of Institute Street in Jackson, Tennessee. That street no longer exists. The families, the homes that were on that street are all gone now because of the tornado. But these are pictures of our family members when we had events there at the home. We had so much fun. All of the great food, all of the great memories, the times singing together, going to church together, just fellowshipping together there in Jackson, Tennessee was so much fun. But we were all there, both the Chatman side, but all of the siblings that came in from across the country for not only celebration of life services, but also the family times that we had together, which were so much fun. And we looked at for those, all of the efforts that we had together growing up. And these pictures I'm sharing are all connected to what it was like for us when we went south to go see family, not only in Jackson, but also there in Union City with my father. And the interesting thing about how did my parents meet? One of my mother's sister was also a teacher, and she taught in Union City. And that's how they met. They were at an event together, and my father saw her, and it was like, I got to find out who she is. And lo and behold, a couple years later, they were united. And so that all came about because one of my sisters was teaching there in Jackson, Tennessee, as well as Union City, Tennessee. So these family photographs with my grandfather and his family members are just so incredibly important for us all. And Uncle Charles, he was the only son, Charles Chatman, the second, affectionately known as Brother, and his family. This is courtesy of my cousin Kelly's, Reverend Kelly Chatman's book, To Be Seen and Heard, a must read. Family, family, family. That Institute Street had so much and so many memories for us as we still share with each other how important it was growing up and all of the impact that we had when those moments, it seemed like it were real short, but they had so much relevance to where we are today. My mother, this is an early picture that we have, a family photo of my mother when she was in her 20s. And this is part of what the Chatman sisters, they were all performing and all very involved in events throughout Jackson, Tennessee. But my grandfather and my mother were together with a picture with my grandfather, and my oldest sister, Herlette, were together. And our grandparents, Dr. Elijah Charles and Josie Chatman. Here's some of the personal information that we found from the archives and information that we found about Aunt Chris. And this is something when you look at historical records and you look at the descendants and you look at all of the things that you can find in these ancestral sites, information about the family. And this is a census snapshot of Aunt Christine and her siblings that was a part of the census record. What was great with doing all of this research that we've done and preparing for the full-blown documentary that we're preparing, the information that a number of other resources that we've been able to work with and uncover, this was provided by Diane Brown, called Connecting the Dots there in Jackson, Tennessee. Her website, her information that she found and sent to me had the first article and poster of a musical program by the 7 Chatman sisters: Lulu Reed, radio singer, Myron Dorothy, Johnny May, Willette, Irma Ray, Kathleen, and Christine. And at the First Baptist Church, and recognize what they put on this poster, the colored church. So they wanted to make sure that they knew, based on the segregation and what was happening at that time, there might have been, and probably were, other Baptist churches, but they wanted to make sure that everyone knew that this particular event was going to be at the African American colored church, the First Baptist Church. featuring Christine Chapman, the pianist, Decca recording, making artists, and these girls are daughters of C.E. Chapman, the chiropractor, auspicious son of Solomon, admission free. So the chitlin-circuit, the historical perspective of the chitlin-circuit, this document that was published in Florida gave a historical research and documentation and project that we give them credit for. This was published in June of 23, Remembering, Educate, and Celebrate. And in this document, I was really glad to be able to find this because it really gave a good perspective of Denver Ferguson, who was an opportunist, but he was also a brilliant businessman that had a lot of things going on. But he recognized, as he worked and owned a printing company, but also recognizing, particularly in Indianapolis, of how big that the music scene had become, how important it was to not only help create an avenue for the musicians and performers to perform, but also how can we recruit the community and having all of this great entertainment put in a perspective that it's targeting for the African American community. And this particular chitlin-circuit booklet really talked about how he came into not only working with Christine Chapman's band, but a number of others to book them throughout clubs throughout Chicago, Indiana, Tennessee, Mississippi, that whole chitlin-circuit as it's described. That circuit, he was one of the primary bookers of those entertainment acts. Unfortunately for Mr. Ferguson, he was also very involved in numbers and some of the gambling things that unfortunately took a dark turn for him in his career. But the impact that he launched through these nightclubs that he created, that we're going to be sharing pictures of the clubs in the documentary that Aunt Chris performed in, and a number of the artists that they played in the chitlin-circuit. And I think it's just fascinating to see not only the clubs, but knowing these are the places that she performed in and how that came about from this individual who was such an integral part of the chitlin-circuit. What we also discovered in the document research that we were doing, this is the cover page for a dissertation by Dr. Warren Beebe. This is called They Never Stop Rockin', A Brief History of the Chitlin-Circuit, Mississippi, and Their Effects on American Music. His documentary that was published through the University of Southern Mississippi University, that was published online, that I found was fascinating. And he is one of the first authors of the chitlin-circuit that actually recognized in chapter 4, Christine Chapman's work and the people that she performed with. We've made every effort and going to continue to do to see if we can find and reach Dr. Beebe to talk with him about his research, because this was really groundbreaking work that he did in his research on the chitlin-circuit. There are two other areas that we were connected to, Blues and Rhythm magazine. I came across this in, I believe, 2010, 2011, somewhere around in there, with doing this research. And the Blues and Rhythm magazine out of the UK had an article, and the front page had Christine Chapman's photograph on it. And it was published in 2007, edition 224. I reached out, sent an email, and found do you still have copies this many years later? And they only had a few left. So I was able to obtain a copy, 2 copies of the Blues and Rhythm magazine, edition 224 from 2007. And after reviewing that article written by Dan Cochran and Dave Penny, we discovered a lot of great information, but unfortunately, as I've talked with Dan, some of it wasn't accurate. And so I reached out to Blues and Rhythm magazine to tell them, because at the end of the story, they said, if anybody ever knows what happened or if she's still alive, can they please let us know? And Dan described for me that he had found these photographs of Christine Chapman at a garage sale that had a lot of music artifacts. and he didn't know who she was. So he began that research, he and Dave. And that article, which was presented in the Blues and Rhythm magazine in 2007, had a lot of information about the recordings, who she performed with, and a lot of those. By the time I saw that article, I had already collected the majority of the physical recordings that were cited in their article. So, talking with Dan, we were able to actually do a little fact checking with him, and we did a follow-up article with him with family members, Anthony Chatman, my cousin, as well as Madeline Green. We helped correct some of the misinformation that was published, but since they did not reach out to family, didn't know that she had a family, they didn't know. So we were very appreciative that they allowed us to participate in correcting some of that information and updating that story, which was published in 2018, edition 326. So we were really excited that we had that opportunity to do just that. And when we talk about the traveling schedule for Christine Chatman, Indianapolis is where it all started. The Naptown Boogie, the first recording. It was so much fun to not only hear the music, but to see from 1945, 46, and 48, that whole tour that she was on and all of the locations that she performed in, as well as in Chicago. And the name of those clubs, the key clubs, Brownsville Swing. Denver Ferguson had them extremely busy with this first leg of the chitlin-circuit. So 1944 and 45. For me, this information was absolutely incredible because we had no idea that she had committed so much of her time with her band and through Denver Ferguson to perform for the military. And she performed at a number of the bases throughout Tuskegee, Oklahoma. She was out in the camp, Fort Knox, as well as Maxwell Field in Alabama. What we also discovered in this research is that there were two different formats. One was the USO, which was another part of a lot of the artists that were being booked. And then there was the non-commissioned officers clubs. And that's where the chitlin-circuit performers performed on that circuit. They performed in the hangars. They performed in large areas for the pilots and the soldiers during that area, mostly the African-American artists that she played for and performed for. What we discovered also in these historical records that I have been working diligently, and I'm hoping by the time we go to full production for the documentary, we discovered in the ARFs, a part of the military Jubilee initiatives, issue number 80, or broadcast and recording number 80, featuring the Christine Chatman Orchestra that was recorded in 1944. I've been in touch with the locations that has those historical documents and film in Los Angeles, and I'm hoping and praying we can get a copy of that, because that will be the first that we will be able to see and hear her performing live. During that time frame, you see also in 1944, 1945, the recordings there in Indianapolis of Naptown Boogie, working with the Denver Ferguson's booking agency, the clubs, the theater acts, also the southbound routes, Louisville, the military bases, the Midwest South Transportation Point, Nashville, the clubs that she performed in, but also Jackson, Tennessee, Coming Home, Birmingham, Alabama, the Tuskegee, Alabama format, and the Tuskegee military bases that she performed at. And I have been able to work with the Historical Society to obtain information about the touring that was occurring, as well as what happened during those non-commissioned performances and how they were booked and how that happened. So this is something that we're going to be sharing, but how important was the military time for her? Here's just something that we saw in one of the historical articles of the hundreds that we've been able to obtain. The Chatman creates a Dan craze in the military personnel that loved her shows because they were high energy. She did not spare anything when she performed for the military personnel. And she had a great time, not only in the bookings, but also in the historical information. I received one of the photographs of what the hangars looked like at that time that she was performing in, as well as none of the other artists in non-commission performances. So in these tour spots, St. Louis, Jump Blues residencies, the key venues, Club 666 Paradise Theater, radio appearances and early recordings that all occurred during the 45 through 49 era that she was touring, but also the Midwest, the nightclubs that she performed in and the cities that she performed in, having that information and then seeing, particularly for the Southern Circuit, this article that says Christine Chatman continues to break dance records in the South. So having this historical documented efforts from the newspapers really put in perspective not only impact of what she was doing as she was performing for the audiences, but the perception for every time that she went in who all wanted her to come back. So we look at Coming Home. Jackson, Tennessee awaits Christine Chatman's gala homecoming. Christine Chatman Records smash hits. Now, here's what's amazing about Jackson, Tennessee, because not only without Chris and her performing, but she also was able to introduce one of her other community members and a member of the Jackson community, Big Mabel, who recorded Hurry, Hurry, which was a big hit. Now, this was a cover song, a cover recording, because it had been recorded by the original artist, and this was a cover of Hurry, Hurry that they performed. That's on the Decca label. And this was something that I found really fascinating because Big Mabel was such a big star. This was her launching pad, but she went on to have an amazing, successful career. And so we look at Jackson, Tennessee, and the amazing talent that came out of Jackson, Tennessee, highlighted in all of these great articles. And we look at not only the collaboration that we highlight with this photograph, but as Christine Chatman crossed paths with Joe Liggins and his Honey Dippers on the Southern Circuit, her work absorbed their West Coast influence. We heard the shift in Specialty Records' deep feeling kind of love, where the frantic energy of Midwest boogie cools down into a smoother late night rhythm. This particular track I absolutely love. We can't share in the trailer those recordings, but we will in the documentary as we've gotten all of the necessary permissions from the license holder for the catalogs for the Decca labels, specialty labels, Million Records. That's all a part of why this trailer is really introducing music that we're hearing from the YouTube audio library. We're appreciative that this is there. So we've got music that's similar to that era that we're also highlighting. Also, in 1954, as we've done this research, we've discovered her Las Vegas tour, what it was like being on the West Coast. She was the house band at the Thunderbird Casino that she had an opportunity to play for so many great artists. And again, because she had an orchestra, she backed up a lot of the personnel that came into the clubs that she was performing at. But she was and her band were the musical act for the Platters. In 1954, we see an actual map. We were able to plot it out of all of the locations that she played at, as well as performing with the Platters. And that to me was absolutely an amazing time, because during that time frame when the original recording of Only You, the first recording which was on the Federal label, Chris and her band, that's the backup band for the Federal label. In 1955, the Platters moved to Mercury, so they were on a different label. So they re-recorded that song, and that's what you hear in a lot of the historical recordings. But we have in our possession the original recording on the Federal label. Here's what's amazing about this process too, is she was a part of this collaborative effort. One of those that she worked with, Peppy Prince, Pepper Prince on the Million Records. Chatman partnered with Pepe Prince Orchestra for Wino's Lament. This track showcases how her vocal delivery evolved, blending standard blues themes with the sharp theatrical arrangements typical of post-war ensembles. That's a great recording, but all of these articles and posters that we've discovered talk about not only her career, but who she recorded with and where she recorded as well as performed. Her last recording, Walnut Grove.
What a great big God we serve. We serve. What a great big God we serve. We serve. All we see, all you do, hear all you say. I'm gonna live by His holy word. What a great big God we serve. We serve. What a great big God we serve. We serve. All we see, all you do, hear all you say. I'm gonna live by His holy word. Our Father, keep praying. Lord in heaven, keep on praying. Lord, keep praying. Our holy name, keep on praying. Our kingdom come, keep praying. Our will be done, keep on praying. On earth, keep praying. As it is in heaven.
What's so amazing about this recording that we have, What a Great Big God We Serve, is the title of the recording. And I was able to reach out after the 2018 article with Blues and Rhythms. Dan, the co-author of that article, shared with me a contact, and Mr. George Cobb, who was one of the members of the chorus. And I was able to have a conversation with him. And he gave me permission to record our conversation of what it was like to be a part of the Walnut Grove Male Chorus and the recordings that occurred and touring with my Aunt Chris. Just fascinating. But what we also discovered in this research is that this particular label, this was a local label there in Jackson, Tennessee, and the individual who was involved with the actual engineering of this recording and hit the studio, I've had a chance to find in his early 80s, that we had a conversation with, that we was sharing the documentary of what it was like, not only the recording there and what was amazing about all of the personnel who made recordings and came through Jackson, Tennessee, and how important Jackson, Tennessee, again, is a part of the recording historical perspective that just does not get the credit that it deserves. We're going to do our best to bring that forward. What I also want to do and have done for the documentary, I was there in 1979 at the celebration of life services for my Aunt Chris with our family members and siblings. And we are going to bring to light the memorial tributes that was in the obituary, read by the descendants of the siblings of Christine Chatman. And we're going to share those words in real time. And that's something that I'm so excited about, because having the family members and nieces, nephews, daughters, and family members read those memorials are a tribute to Aunt Chris and our family. One of the things for me that's also important as a member of the American Federation of Musicians, to help correct some of the misinformation about her career. One of the things that we discovered in a lot of articles, that she had been blacklisted and blackballed because of not paying union dues. But in the mid-1940s, the American Federation of Musicians and the president at that time went on strike to establish a priority for the recording artists and the royalties, but also the musicians performing in the nightclubs. And this was something that would really brought about a huge effort to make sure that all of the musicians who joined the union in those union clubs were represented, and they are still today. And as a member of the American Federation of Musician Union number 5, spending time with Aunt Chris, I still have my union card. And this is something that for me was so important because I, sitting with her, talking with her, I pulled out of my wallet my union card, and she just laughed because she had hers literally taped on the piano. She had one, she always kept it there because the union reps would come in to verify that the musicians were connected to the union, that all of the things that needed to happen. And when I was first touring in the early 70s with the show band that I was with, and see club number, let's see, Union 56 out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. I was in Central Michigan at the time with the first band that I was touring with, playing in the clubs called Jammer. And we were part of the local 56 out of Grand Rapids. So the clubs that we were playing here in Michigan and here in the Midwest, we had our union card. So we were legitimately in the union clubs doing what we needed to do. Also, I did an interview with my cousin. We call her Cuz, Mickey Rouse. She is the niece of the only person with a marriage license on record, married to my Aunt Chris. And we're going to have an interview. We have an interview with her that we're going to have the sharing of her story, her family story, and the impact of what it was like to have an uncle who was married to Aunt Chris, but also the amazing thing that the family went through in that challenging time. And she's going to share that story with us, which for me, to hear it, to be a part of all of the sharing that went along with that, to me was really, really important. My Aunt Chris, again, she was a part of the local 105 there in Terre Haute, Indiana. And that's where we were able to get the historical records in our archives to help clear her name. So this is something for me that's really, really important.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is James Cherry. I'm calling from Jackson, Tennessee. I'm the president of the Jazz Foundation of West Tennessee. I'm trying to reach Mr. Rich Coleman. Ms. Coleman, I hope I got the right number. As president of the Jazz Foundation of West Tennessee, we are going to erect a historical marker for Christine Chapman. And I was reading in a previous articles on her that you are her nephew, and we would definitely like to get family involved in that ceremony. If you know James Cherry, I'm president of the Jazz Foundation of West Tennessee in Jackson, Tennessee.
Mr. James Cherry, the invitation to participate in this event. August 1st, 2025. What an amazing day that was. I was so excited with getting the phone call. I really had to play it twice. I came home, played it for my wife, knowing that I had been involved with all this research with our family and knowing that I was working on this project, but this put it in perspective. Not only hearing from the Jazz Foundation of West Tennessee, but how important her life, her music, her career meant to the city of Jackson. So at that event that we attended on August 1st, 2025, we also had the Walnut Grove Baptist Church of Jackson, Tennessee. Pastor Clarence Williams, E. Williams, did the opening prayer for us. I was so excited to reach out to him with Walnut Grove Male Chorus being such an integral part to the part of her career and her music career. We wanted to make sure that we didn't leave the church out, and we won't. I'm so excited about the opportunity to share with him and the church not only this historical perspective, but also the magazine that was featured with the interview of Mr. Cobb and the Walnut Grove Male Chorus. We also had Mr. James Cherry and a number of personnel from the Jazz Foundation that were a part of this effort. But we're also excited to see the mayor, Scott Conger, who was there to do a welcome to the crowd, but also talk about the amazing historical perspective that this artist, another one of the many artists that came out of Jackson, Tennessee, and how important it was for the Jackson community. We also had Mr. Howard Ramsey, who was the director of education for the outreach effort for the Jazz Foundation, and Mr. Richard Donnell, who was part of District 4 there in the Jazz Foundation, talking about how important this historical marker was. Our family that was there that day, my sister Dorla Elaine Coleman Bonner, singing booting the boogie, and I had a chance to back her up, being a part of that. She had such a good time. I was so proud of her and what we did that day. But when we had the photograph, when near the historical marker, we had my niece Tanya and myself, excuse me, and Dorla, who was there, and my cousin Anthony. Our other cousin, who was there but could not make it until we literally were at the end of the ceremony, was Macy Chatman, who lives there in Jackson, Tennessee. She is the oldest surviving descendant of the immediate family members that is going to provide a huge historical perspective for us in the documentary. So I'm excited to not only hear her words, but also what she went through of being a part of the Freedom Riders and sharing what it was like to grow up with so many talented cousins, aunts, and uncles in the family. Here's one of the things for me that I also found fascinating. The African American historical newspaper from 1944 through 1950. Again, I have over 100 articles that Aunt Chris was featured in. Her travel plans, her band routes, every town that she went in and performed in, and the impact of her coming in with the band and how much fun it was. But what I was really surprised at was how they called her the Sepa Goddess. And so many articles, the Sepa Goddess at the skating rink, as you can see here in this article that we have. But this was something for me that was fascinating, because we had never heard that or seen that written up about anything that she had done before until we got these articles. So in closing, we want to share with you what this documentary coming will really be about and what we're going to share beyond what we've done here with the trailer. The documentary will cover 1940 through 79, early life, musical roots, Jackson, Tennessee to Indiana, Chicago, and beyond. The challenges of touring as an African-American band leader, dealing with racism, and we saw that from the Green Book. We saw that in Toba. We saw that in the chitlin-circuit. So all of that's going to be intertwined with what we see in the documentary. The descendants, our perspective, we remember what it was like to go into the South in the 60s, spending time with our family members, as well as hearing the stories of sitting around, having dinner with our aunts and uncles. My grandfather, my twin brother and I would sit in his office, in his chair, and play with his tools, and how important that was. My younger sisters, who were very young at the time, but also had an opportunity to see what was happening there around the 424 Institute Street. Wartime, Tuskegee, Oklahoma, the bases that she performed, particularly the African American soldiers that she performed for. The Collaborator, In Demand Session Player, all of the locations as well as the labels that she performed with. Christine's return to Jackson, family and friends remember. Her only marriage on record, again, because Mickey Rouse is going to share with us her memories of her uncle and Aunt Chris. The final recordings, Walnut Grove Male Chorus, the last surviving Mr. George Cobb, in his own words. Her passing, descendants sharing her siblings' memorial tributes, and highlighting August 1st, 2025, the historical marker in the Jazz Foundation of West Tennessee. Here's what for me, that as a parent of a performing artist and my daughter, and she is one of many of the nieces and nephews, that third generation that we're going to be sharing and doing individual documentaries on their perspective of their recording and music career, and how this information that we've discovered about Aunt Chris has impacted their musical careers and the perspective of what we found, as well as the life that they have lived, also entertaining. But in the group that we've been participating with, of a Facebook group that's the Las Vegas historical Facebook page, I was able to find in the photographs that they share with me, a marquee photograph at the Thunderbird Casino with Aunt Chris's name when she was there. But as a performing daughter, my daughter, Brittany Coleman, she's on Broadway and touring around the country doing music, doing theater, and a number of shows. When she had the lead role in Company, her photograph and the production was hanging on light poles and banners throughout Los Angeles. So third generation that has a similar format. Who would have thought? And how blessed that is to be able to see that, but also knowing that this third generation that you're going to hear about has amazing artists that we've been able to highlight and uncover with our family.